Vengeance Saga just came out and I am in love with the songs here. 80s synth with Hermes just works, you know? Anyway, so now I want to go back to the good old myths and ask an important question of how close is the Vengeance Saga to the original counterpart? If you like this kind of content, I actually covered the previous sagas here. Now, disclaimer, adaptations, especially musical ones, will always take creative liberties, and the point of this video series, I guess, isn't to say that just because you're not following the original means you're a poor adaptation. No, if anything, if you can make the logic within the story consistent and even reinvent an age-old character like Odysseus and his adventures into a new, modern take, then I think that's an amazing feat. But anyway, what I'm interested in is investigating the deeper stories behind the myth itself and then connecting them to the songs. So, let's begin. The Vengeance Saga is the final section of Odysseus' journey where, after being beaten down by life and hardening his heart, he rises up against his adversaries and remains determined to get back home despite everything. The Vengeance Saga is the culmination of Odysseus' hardened warrior character development from the previous songs, ending with him getting the final vindication against Poseidon. Compared to the myth though, Epic takes a more character-centric development where Odysseus fights against his problems, as opposed to the more desperate, beaten, and honestly ready to just end it all Odysseus from the myth who could not catch a break. So starting off with, Not Sorry for Loving You. I actually didn't give Calypso and Odysseus' time together much emphasis when I covered it the first time, which was honestly a big mistake because some people had the wrong idea that Odysseus' time fornicating with Calypso was grounds for high treason against Penelope, so I want to talk more about it here. Not Sorry for Loving You is a sad, almost misguided love song about Calypso's torment from being all alone in the island for years. And then when she finally found Odysseus, it was both a mix of genuine attraction and manic loneliness that drove the nymph to be an uncomfortable and coercive force. What this song expands for her characterization is, instead of presenting her like the firmer Calypso in the myth, it plays on her vulnerabilities of losing a love after years of isolation, but it also recognizes that the way that she kept him from his life in Ithaca was wrong. Now, going to the original myth, the myth doesn't exactly talk a lot about what happened during those 7 years, but instead gives emphasis to how Hermes and Calypso discussed the matter of freeing Odysseus. So, what happened is that Hermes begins his conversation by telling her that he doesn't want to be here, but there's no god that can override the will of Aegis-bearing Zeus. Hermes tells her that she needs to set Odysseus free because it's not by his fate that he will die here, but rather return home to his high-roofed house. Calypso is distraught, of course, and says that the gods are far too jealous and unhappy. She calls out the gods for their double standards of if how a goddess were to have their way with a mortal man, then the pantheon would either kill the mortal or make the goddess suffer, which, fair enough. She also helpfully points out that Odysseus was saved by her, after Zeus was the one who struck down his ship. So she finds it hypocritical that he's decreeing to let Odysseus go after Zeus being the one that did that to him. But she relents nevertheless, agreeing with Hermes that no one can override Zeus's plans. When she finds Odysseus again, he's sitting by the shore full of tears and mourning his return. So when Calypso tells him that he can return home and that she'll help him build a ship, Odysseus is rightfully suspicious that she was planning something different. If anything, Odysseus is worried that she's sending him off to the sea against Zeus and Poseidon alone, which is an immediate death sentence. So he makes her swear that this isn't a devious plan to injure him. Of course, we know that Calypso does harbor genuine feelings of lust and love for him, so she agrees and swears that there's no ill intent towards Odysseus. When they have their dinner for one last time, Calypso wishes him well but questions why he's so keen on returning home when he knows that it's not only a dangerous trip, but that he's also passing on the opportunity for immortality by staying on her island. She even says that she's no worse than Penelope, and it's wrong for mortal women to even compete with gods in form and beauty. To which Odysseus responds that while Calypso is beautiful, it's not fair or just to compare Penelope's beauty with hers, since the latter will never age or die. What I appreciate about this song is the contrast with Calypso's initial introduction, as a demeaning and overbearing goddess, and instead encapsulates the loneliness she felt across the centuries. This song also slightly remedies the tense relationship between Calypso and Odysseus when they first met and over the course of 7 years, because much like this song, the final conversation between them was also one of the rare moments that Odysseus, in the myth, shows his gratitude for Calypso and shares that he does care for her platonically. It took 4 days for him and Calypso to finish the raft, then another day for Calypso to prepare his goods. Going into Dangerous. We've got our golden boy with the 80s synth being an absolute dear, telling him that Odysseus was being given one final option because someone fought for him. He tells Odysseus that he has one final shot at getting home, as long as he doesn't open the bag that was given to him, much like what happened in Keep Your Friends Close. Now, this conversation in the myth never happened because the myth focused on Hermes and Calypso's discussion, and a pretty funny line about how Hermes didn't actually want to be there. Anyway, first up, in good old classic Epic the Musical fashion, the stakes are heightened here to emphasize the gods versus mortals agenda going on between Odysseus and Poseidon. So the windbag being a callback to how Odysseus evaded Poseidon the first time is very important because, as we'll see in the later songs, the windbag becomes pivotal in his journey and success. But in the original, because Odysseus and his crew were taken back to Iwose, and Iwose basically told them to leave, he doesn't have the windbag here. Second is that this song is supposedly the time when Hermes warns him about Charybdis, hence uncharted waters. But if you remember from my previous video, Charybdis and Scylla and the Sirens were warned to Odysseus by Circe before he left her island for the second time after returning from the underworld. Third is, I'm not sure if this is intentional, but when strangers lurk around the isle could be a reference to the suitors and even the new faces in the next island that Odysseus will wound up in. Next we have Charybdis. The song Charybdis is Odysseus' final hurrah as he gets to the last leg of his adventure, with nothing but the mighty raft that he built with Calypso. This song serves as a culmination of Odysseus' anger towards everything and how exhausted he is from all that's happened to him, saying that he's still fighting here and that he's not dying here. This moment was the worst possible thing that could happen to Odysseus, because this happens after Zeus kills all of his men, and he simply was hanging on to a loose piece of wood being left behind by the bolted ship, when he realized that he was slowly drifting off towards Charybdis. The waters started moving at an unprecedented speed and the sea monster's mouth began sucking up all of the water. During this time, Odysseus was still contemplating how unlucky he was, and he was desperately trying to hold onto a fig tree as the last piece of the boat was spit out. I jumped into the lofty fig tree and held on there, as if I were a bat, but there was nowhere I could plant my feet, nor could I climb the tree. Its roots were spread far down below me, and its branches stretched above me, out of reach, immense and long, shadowing Charybdis. So I hung there, staunch in my hope that when she spewed again, she'd throw up keel and mast. According to the myth, he stayed at sea for 9 to 10 days before drifting off to Calypso's island. I was really hyped for how the epic was going to show the sea monster because I loved Charybdis in the original myth. No humanoid, no nothing, just a disgusting force of nature that was almost invisible until you got close to her, similar to a black hole. And can I just say that it was absolutely genius to put her as the final adversary against Odysseus because of the sheer destructive force that Charybdis represented. Charybdis wasn't even an enemy that talked or sung, it was just there, a creature of pure water and pure unadulterated fear. And I think that this song did it so much justice. Combining the next 2 songs together gets us the final climax between Poseidon and Odysseus, where so close to home, Poseidon intervenes and demands that Odysseus fight him himself and die in the water. Poseidon threatens the citizens of Ithaca if Odysseus doesn't confront him. Odysseus tries to beg for Poseidon's mercy and forgiveness as one final appeal, telling him that this fight has gone for too long across the decade. Poseidon, however, is unrelenting, saying that he can't forgive Odysseus, to which he attacks and strikes. Odysseus, however, is not having any of this shit because he's been through enough and opens the windbag, sealing his fate that he will be stuck forever in the water. Poseidon taunts him further as Odysseus has blocked his own way home. However, Odysseus uses the windbag to his advantage and somehow overpowers Poseidon, stabbing him in his chest with his own trident. As a god, Poseidon can't die from this, so he has to feel every sharp pain and strife that Odysseus carves into him, to which Poseidon finally begs for mercy and eventually calls off the attack. Now, as cool as this song is, it is important to note that the gods in written mythology are seen as higher than mortals, and that includes the emphasis that mortal life cannot match the divine. And even if you did, most of the time, the gods are the reason that they got those powers in the first place, and the moment they become egotistical and lose their way, they will be punished for insolence. It's not impossible to outwit or damage a god, but that usually comes with horrible consequences. Looking at you, Sisyphus. So let's see how this played out in the story. Poseidon just came back from Ethiopia only to hear the news that something's wrong. Odysseus was out and about back on the sea trying to get home. Pissed, Poseidon thinks that the gods must have changed their plan for Odysseus. Even if fate ordains that Odysseus will get home, Poseidon has no intention of making it easy for him, so he stirs up a difficult wave and slams Odysseus' poor ship into nothing. As Odysseus is helplessly floating along the water, he begins to doubt his want to leave Calypso's island, and thinks that she was right for warning him. Unlike the sturdier and motivated Odysseus in the musical, Myth Odysseus was ready to die by Poseidon's hand at sea, and has accepted his fate of demise and wishes he died in Troy instead of here, alone in the water. And what's kind of funny is that Zeus catches a random stray because Odysseus says that Zeus was the one that sent him the wave. Honestly, I feel bad for the guy. It's also important to note that unlike Get in the Water, Poseidon knows that no matter what he does, he can't actually kill Odysseus, because the fates have ordained that he survived, and not even Poseidon has the rule to overwrite that. And Odysseus does get saved. A sea goddess named Leucothea takes pity on the poor Odysseus and tells him to go to a land of people raised by Zeus, Aegea. She gives him a veil and tells him to tie it around his chest. I'm not sure what the veil does specifically, but she says that it makes sure that he won't die or suffer. She does warn him though that when his hand can touch the shore, he needs to take it off and throw it from the land and into the dark sea. Then he has to turn away afterwards. We find out that when he does do that, it's just that the hands of the sea do take back the veil and nothing exactly happens. Actually, this part of the story after Calypso's island isn't just focused on Poseidon making his life a living hell while he was alone at sea, but also Athena helping him out. Remember, the myth never had a falling out between Odysseus and Athena. Athena just left somewhere there. So what happened during this part of the story is that Athena would block the wind except for the right path that would lead Odysseus to land. And she also put thoughts in his mind to escape the last few islands that he encountered. This wasn't a moment of a determined and desperate Odysseus fighting off a god in triumph, but a broken man who had nothing left after everything. But with Athena's guidance and help, she keeps supporting him throughout the last leg of his journey and fulfilling her role as his patron god. Okay, but a bonus tidbit from Poseidon, since this is his moment of defeat in the musical. In Book 13, we get a moment between Zeus and Poseidon where the latter is not happy that Odysseus was able to return home with the help of the Phaeacians. He went to Zeus and said that the Phaeacians, who were also Poseidon's descendants, weren't respecting him at all because Poseidon made his intentions very clear that he was going to make Odysseus' life a living hell. And Poseidon is really bitter about this, especially since the Phaeacians even gave Odysseus a lot of gold and trophies to bring home with him. Zeus is having none of this and is absolutely flabbergasted by the idea that Poseidon would even insinuate that the gods are disrespecting Poseidon. So he just tells Poseidon to do what he wants, but it's not really Zeus's fault if the people respected and cared for Odysseus. Poseidon does try to retort, but he also recognizes that Zeus's will is Zeus's will. And Zeus, being the supportive brother that he is, gives Poseidon an amazing suggestion of luring all of the men into the shore by making the speeding boats into stone, then locking everyone in by making a ring of mountains around their village. So in the end, Odysseus and Poseidon's conflict wasn't necessarily resolved, but rather Odysseus was saved from Poseidon and the god punished the ones who helped him out. Unfortunately. I'm not really sure if we're going to get a song on the Phaeacians come the next saga, but I'm interested to see if it's going to go back to Ithaca. But based on the lyrics, I think we're going to skip that part of the mythology and go straight into Ithaca, so I'm excited to see what happens. Anyway, my name is Aster and thank you for chilling with me. Bye-bye! And if I pushed you, or if I came on too strong, or if I ambushed you, for that I'll say I was wrong. And if you hate me, then I am sorry, my love's too much for you.